Lieutenant Sarah Voss crouched behind the twisted wreckage of her drop pod. Her tactical radio pressed against her ear as static crackled through the comm line. The emergency beacon had finally connected to command, cutting through 3 days of radio silence on this godforsaken frontier world. She needed extraction. She needed supplies. She needed command to understand that her mission had gone sideways, in ways no training manual could have predicted. What she didn't need was Ruko, the lion cub, if something the size of a small bear could still be called a cub, padded over to her position with that peculiar waddle unique to juvenile megafauna. His golden fur was matted with the purple dust of Kepler 442b's endless plains, and his eyes held that dangerous combination of curiosity and absolute fearlessness that Sarah had come to dread. Command. This is Voss, authentication code Tango 79er. Do you copy? Sarah spoke quickly, keeping her voice low and professional. A burst of static, then, Voss, this is Command Actual. We copy. Sit rep, Lieutenant. Your pod's telemetry went dark 72 hours ago. Yes, sir. I experienced catastrophic systems failure during atmospheric entry. The pod... Sarah paused as Ruko nuzzled against her shoulder, his massive head nearly knocking the radio from her hand. She gently pushed him away. The pod crash landed approximately 40 kilometers from the survey site. I'm mobile but require immediate extraction. The indigenous wildlife is Ruar. Ruko had discovered the radio's microphone. The cub's curious sniff had turned into a full-throated vocalization directly into the receiver, a sound somewhere between a roar and an enthusiastic bark that made Sarah's ears ring even through the headset. Voss? Voss, what was that? Are you under attack? Command's voice sharpened with alarm. Sarah grabbed Ruko by his scruff, an exercise in futility given that he outweighed her by at least 30 kilos, and tried to drag him away from the radio. He interpreted this as a new game and playfully swatted at her arm, claws retracted but still leaving impressive dents in her tactical suit. Negative. Command. Negative. The wildlife is friendly. Repeat. Friendly contact. Sarah wedged herself between Ruko and the radio, using her body as a barrier. Behind her, she could hear the rustling of the other cubs emerging from the tall grass where they'd been napping. There were 6 of them in total. Sarah had found them, or rather they'd found her, on the first day after the crash. Their mother was nowhere to be seen, and the cubs had apparently decided that this strange, small, relatively hairless creature was an acceptable substitute parent. Or possibly a very interesting toy. Sarah hadn't quite figured out which. Lieutenant, clarify friendly contact. Your file says Kepler 442b's apex predators are Class 4 hostile. We're reading elevated stress hormones in your biofeed. Sir, the predators in question are juveniles, young, they're... Sarah grunted as another cub, smaller than Ruko but equally enthusiastic, climbed onto her back. They're non-hostile, currently. Muru? Ruko's face appeared over her shoulder, his enormous amber eyes fixed on the radio with intense fascination. The device was making interesting sounds. Ruko liked interesting sounds. Boss, you're breaking up. Repeat last transmission. I said they're non-hostile. I've established a rapport with Ruko. No. But it was too late. Ruko had learned that touching the interesting sound box made the human make different sounds. His paw, wider than Sarah's hand, slammed down on the transmit button. Growl, mrow, mrow, roar. The cub's triumphant announcement of his achievement echoed across the comm channel. In the background, Sarah could hear the other cubs joining in. A chorus of juvenile roars, chirps, and guttural rumbles that sounded like a malfunctioning diesel engine being thrown into a blender. Command, stand by, Sarah shouted over the cacophony. She grabbed Ruko around his middle, a tactical error as the cub immediately went into play mode, batting at her face with his dinner plate-sized paws. The other cubs, seeing their alpha engaged in this wonderful new wrestling game, swarmed over both of them. Sarah found herself at the bottom of a pile of purring, growling 200-kilo juvenile Keplerian lions, all of whom were absolutely convinced that this was the best afternoon ever. The radio crackled. Voss, are you compromised? We're scrambling a rescue team. ETA 40 minutes. Hold position and is that purring? Sarah managed to extract one arm from the pile and grabbed the radio. A cub, she thought it might be the shy one she'd named Whisper, was kneading her stomach like dough, claws thankfully retracted. Ruko had her other arm pinned and was enthusiastically grooming her hair with his sandpaper tongue. Command, she gasped. Negative on the rescue team. I'm mobile. I can make it to the extraction point on my own, but I need clearance for additional passengers. Silence on the other end. Then, define additional passengers, Lieutenant. Sarah looked at the pile of cubs surrounding her. Ruko met her gaze and let out a small, questioning chirp. His head tilted in that way that made her resolve crumble every single time. She'd spent 3 days keeping these cubs alive. She'd hunted for them, well, her suit's protein synthesizer had, but still. She'd kept them warm during the freezing nights when Kepler 442b's twin moons rose, and the temperature dropped to near lethal levels. She'd sung them Earth lullabies when they whimpered, missing their mother, and they'd kept her sane. Kept her moving. Kept her from giving up when the loneliness and isolation threatened to swallow her whole. 6 juvenile Keplerian lions, sir. Orphaned. Imprinted on human contact. Sarah paused. They're coming with me. Another long silence. Sarah could imagine the chaos in command right now. Officers scrambling through xenobiology protocols and quarantine regulations. Finally, Boss, you're asking us to transport Class 4 predators to the orbital station. Do you understand the morale? Ruko had found the radio again. This time, instead of roaring, he simply pressed his nose against the speaker, producing a wet snuffling sound that somehow came across as deeply apologetic. Sarah heard something on the other end that might have been a laugh. Quickly suppressed. Lieutenant Voss, Command said, and now there was something warm in the voice. Something almost amused. You're cleared for extraction. All passengers. But you're filing the paperwork on this one. Command out. As the comm channel closed, Sarah collapsed back into the purple grass. 6 lion cubs draped across her like a living blanket. Gruko rested his massive head on her chest, purring like a faulty reactor. You're all more trouble than you're worth, Sarah muttered, scratching behind his ears. Ruko's purr intensified. His eyes drifted closed. Humans, he'd decided, made excellent furniture and excellent friends.